Jayesh, we have with us today Captain Ashok B. Shirur. Sir served with the air defense for 5 odd years and then has been in the cybersecurity industry for last 3 odd decades. He has his own business venture by the name of Micros, and Sir has been a service provider, or so as to say, information security and cyber security vendor to a lot of large organizations, Fortune 500 companies, public sector undertakings, etc. Today, we are going to discuss with him, if you are wanting to be a cybersecurity professionals, how to approach this career track or this function, cybersecurity as a profession, from the service provider or from the vendor side of the industry. So not just being on the principal side, but also what it takes, and what are the typical career contours if you're on the vendor side. And Sir has 3 decades of rock solid experience in not just the domain, but also on this particular aspect of the industry. So we'll be gaining from him on this aspect. So welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening and thank you.
So my first question would be, for these three categories, what would be more suitable, the principal side or the service provider of the vendor side of the industry?
So, like I said, this is a call which is very, very personality driven. It's not really something that I can, paint with a single brushstroke. It's very, very subjective. An officer who very clearly knows himself where he's ready to unlearn, where he's ready to relearn. One of the examples I can give is with your own advertisement. The advertisement that you come out with, where you clearly state that don't expect any static salary. Everything is going to be dependent upon the value that you bring to the table. You need to be malleable. You need to be open to client interaction, etc., etc. So these are very subjective calls. There is no single answer. There is no correct answer. An officer who wants to make the most of what years are left of his life may go into the system integrator role. An officer who goes into a vendor, into an OEM, may find himself slotted into an area which is very, very limiting. There is very little scope to grow because of maybe qualificational limitations, could be because of organizational restrictions, etc., etc. But in a system integrator, there is no restriction to growth. Whatever you deliver, your organization will keep pushing you to deliver more, and you will keep getting more and more exposure to take on more responsibility, grow in more directions in your life, in your career. I'm not certain if I'm answering the question the way you are expecting.
No, that's okay, sir. So I'll ask a follow-up question. What is typically the scale and size of the companies which are providing cyber security, information security services to the industry, sir? What is, like, if I say, I would give an example from the industry I am from, real estate, for say. So there are builders, and now over a period of time, there are equally big building contractors, material suppliers, which, I mean, the vendors to the industry are equally big, and now even brokers, for that matter, are getting organized and scaled. So it's no more mom and pop shows. There are those also, but so what typically is the scale and size of the vendors to in the information sec and the cyber sec side of things?
Okay, so see the scale and size of companies providing information security solutions, those could vary widely. I mean, the industry would comprise of a diverse range of companies, whether it is small boutique firms specializing in niche areas, or it could be large multinational conglomerates offering comprehensive security solutions. So it's a very wide range. So if we were to break it down, there would be the SMEs, the small and medium scale organizations that provide cybersecurity or information security specialized services. That could be penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, consulting, etc., etc. So that could be a small team, focusing on that niche. Then you could have specialized boutique firms, firms which are focusing on specific aspect of cybersecurity, like only threat intelligence or only incident response or only ethical hacking. Again, the size would be small, about maybe less than 100 specialists. Then you have the national or the regional firms, who have the scale to be able to operate in multiple cities, so they can pick up orders from organizations that have their business operations in multiple cities. Then you have the global system integrators, the large system integrators with a global presence, with a wide array of services, whether it is IT services, whether it is information security services. So they would provide end-to-end solutions. So certain customers want to have a single window of engagement with a system integrator. So they would go for a global system integrator who takes care of all their IT security, etc. needs without having to bother about boutique firms or small firms who do specialized work. Then there are these global cybersecurity companies, companies which are, cybersecurity leaders, recognized as cybersecurity leaders, and they offer a comprehensive range of services, including managed security services, consulting, product development, all of that. And then there are the technology giants, the Cisco's and the, Palo Altos, the Trellix, the IBM Security, etc. of the world. So there would be those larger organizations. So the range is very, very wide. But having said all this, one of the key things from this audience's perspective would be the startups and the innovators. Now, that's a segment which is now significantly growing. Startups and innovators have started to pick up specific areas which are correctly identified with a comprehensive market evaluation and survey done. They're able to identify a niche and make the investments of time and effort, resources into that niche, and come up with solutions which are, paradigm shifts in the way in which things are done. That becomes a game changer. So the short answer is it's a very wide range of companies.
Given the fact that it's a wide range of companies, and we have from boutique 10 people to multinational conglomerates, etc. Still, typically, instead of, let's say, there is an officer who starts and could be any age, what could be a decade-long career path for an officer if he's on the vendor side of things in a 100 people odd kind of organization, given the fact that cybersecurity is growing at a very, very rapid pace?
If I were to look at entry-level positions, the entry-level position for an officer would be something like a security analyst or a security engineer as a start. A mid-level position would be like a security consultant, someone who has a few years of experience, moves into a consulting role and works with clients and provides security assessments, recommendations, solutions tailored to the client requirement, etc., etc. Then there would be the senior level positions where it becomes a security manager or a security director, moving into a managerial role, overseeing security teams, projects or then strategies. This would be a more leadership based responsibility, and the need would be from a strategic planning perspective. So this again, like I mentioned earlier, this could be a chief information officer kind of a role, an executive kind of a role. Then there are specialized roles, where someone is purely into penetration testing, someone is a pure ethical hacker, or someone gets into security research as an area. So this could be another role. Now, if one were to look at it from an entrepreneurial perspective, then again, that's a totally different direction of thought, because, whether starting on your own or starting civil, again, taking from the example that you advertise, the way you advertise that role is basically an entrepreneur within an organization. So you're giving an entrepreneurial offer to someone within your organization. So he becomes an entrepreneur, but within the mothership of your organization. So that becomes another area of suggestion. Then there could be an area in, I had actually built some kind of a permutation combination for this particular question, where the officer takes a call whether he wants to get into sales, he wants to get into services, he wants to get into consulting, he wants to get into hands-on development, he wants to get into what kind of a role. And based on that, then accordingly, the career path could be suggested.
Okay. Sir, my next question, since you mentioned entrepreneurship, and would be that do you think for officers who have that entrepreneurial bent of mind, cyber, infotech, digital security is now the space waiting to be explored?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a significant gap in the industry for organizations to address the gap in the requirement. So there is, it is absolutely an open field with respect to someone with an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, the question is twofold. When you want to become an entrepreneur, are you becoming an entrepreneur from a from a developmental perspective, or are you becoming an entrepreneur from a service provision kind of a perspective, or are you going to become an entrepreneur from a solutioning perspective? So one needs to try and arrive at that answer, because if you are into innovation and technology, then the answer is different. If you want to get into incident response and recovery, then the answer is different. If you want to get into compliance and risk management, the answer is different. If you want to get into cybersecurity consulting, the answer is different. If you want to get into education and training, the answer is different. And I can give you more such permutations. So, but the short answer is the opportunity in the information security space is huge, and the barrier to entry is very, very low. Someone who wants to get into an entrepreneurial direction should seriously consider it. Yes, definitely put in the pen to paper exercise before getting into it. Do the due diligence, do the planning, do the business plan, etc., and only then get into it. But there is nothing which says don't get into it. It's a huge opportunity.
Right. So the opportunity is huge, and for those who have that bent of mind, it's a scalable opportunity as well.
Correct. So I can give you examples even within the army community of officers who've been able to create multi-country operations. Even we provide services outside India. We provide services all around India, but even outside India. But there are ex-service officer-driven organizations that have offices outside India also.
I'll be grateful if you can share a couple of those names.
So NSS is one such name. So they have setups outside India also. And their business in Malaysia, if I'm not wrong, is even larger than the business in India.
Okay. And this is again the information security, that larger domain of things.
Yeah, so they do more. They do a little more than that. But yes, started off with information security as the focus.
Right. Sir. This is a growing field, and it does attract entrepreneurs from the industry growing. So when the industry is growing, naturally it provides a bigger market for newer players and not too deeply entrenched older players, which can probably limit a entrepreneur's growth. So would that be a correct statement?
Can you come again? I didn't get what it is that you're asking.
So what I'm saying, sir, for officers who have the entrepreneurial bent of mind, so cyber security, information security, that broad term kind of offers a domain where the domain is growing very rapidly. So they can enter, and as you said, the entry barrier is pretty low. So that gives them a lesser risk entry, and there aren't so many deeply entrenched established players that for a startup there is hardly any space to scale it up.
So it is not that there aren't entrenched players. There are fairly well entrenched and fairly well regarded players already in the market. There's no for any industry for that matter. It's not only the information security industry. But having said that, nothing stops a startup or nothing stops a fresh entrepreneur who has done his homework from making a break even in an industry where there are existing stakeholders. The market is so large. There is such a large gap between the opportunity and the availability of providers that if the officer makes the investment of time and effort and the plan, there is no reason why he can't succeed.
Okay. So my last question, 3 pieces of advice for those who want to be in the cybersecurity domain as a career. For armed forces officers across the tri-services, central armed police forces, etc. People who have been in the uniform.
So number one would be a constant education and awareness. It's very critical that you constantly upgrade your knowledge of the various kinds of threats, the various kinds of solutions available, the various technologies, the various changes in the scenarios. So one is an awareness. It's very, very critical that one remains completely aware of what is happening, what is available, and what are the threats. Second is networking. This is an industry where networking plays a very, very serious and significant role. So if one is well networked, one can get very, very far with this industry, because this is a trust-based industry. This is a industry which works on word of mouth also. So it is very critical that one gets into networking. And the third point would be, a mistake that a lot of us make, a lot of us, especially armed forces background officers make, is that we don't put pen to paper. We don't do the due diligence, we don't do the planning, we don't do the actual plan before venturing out. If we do that, if we put pen to paper, if we are clear on the various steps and the various things that are the dependencies that are there, and we make that investment on paper before actually venturing out, the percentage of success is that much higher.
Right, sir. So thank you so much for all this advice, sir. I believe that officers who are transitioning and if they wish to look at cybersecurity as a career, your advice is going to help them a lot, sir.